Hello, Packers fans, and happy Friday wherever you may be. It's time for another edition of the Pack Attack Cast for August 22nd, 2025. We are getting closer and closer to week one versus the Lions, and I'm so excited for that day to get here. Um, we are ready to go here on the Pack Attack Cast for the regular season. I'm sure you guys are ready too. And as we learned from practice, the Packers are fired up and ready for that regular season. So let's just try to get through warp speed and try to enjoy the next couple weeks. And then week one will be upon us before we know it. Little business here before we get started. Want to thank everyone again who has subscribed. We are now at 3,800 subscribers. If we could get to 9,000 before we report live to the Packers versus Lions game, I'd really love to see that happen. Who can make that happen? You can make that happen by hitting that subscribe button. And also, if you haven't already done so, give us a like. If you are a subscriber, like this video because that will help the YouTube algorithms help other people find the Attack Cast family and have them sign up as subscribers as well. So really appreciate all the support. In today's episode, we're going to go over some general news and notes. We're going to do a recap of the final practice for 2025, and we're going to take a look tomorrow at our pregame notes for Packers versus Seahawks. And also tomorrow, I'm going to do some question and answers from the audience. As always, you can email us at packattackcast, just like it sounds, at gmail.com. Once again, packattackcast at gmail.com. Send us a question, send us an inquiry, or if you just want to have a conversation, Packers fan to Packers fan, send me a note and I'll be happy to respond. So let's go through some news and notes from today around the NFL, centering around the Packers, of course. And then we're going to go through some notes from the final practice on Thursday. I'm a little late getting to you on that. Unfortunately, I had a family wedding to attend last night and was not able to get the notes before we had to leave for the wedding. So sorry about that, but family comes first, even before the Packers. I know that might be blasphemy, but if you're a true Packer fan, I think you know it's true. So let's go through some NFL news and notes. Coach LaFleur today, or actually Friday, had some interesting things to say about Romeo Doubs. He was very complimentary about the fact that Romeo comes to practice and works hard every day and that he is a key part of the offense. So no question at all that Romeo Doubs is a key part of the Packers offense for this year. We know he's a free agent next year, and that's why there's been a lot of rumors about whether he should be traded because the Packers have too many wide receivers. But as we've seen the last couple weeks with injuries, you can't assume all those wide receivers are going to be ready for you for week number one. So Romeo Doubs has always been a player that Jordan Love has counted on and trusted. He's always been a playmaker, especially on third down and around the end zone. I've never put any credence to this trade Romeo Doubs rumor away. I know he has concussion issues, but we haven't really seen that rear its head so far in training camp this year. He's had some problems with his back, but not necessarily any concussion issues. So my opinion is you let Romeo Doubs be a key part of this offense, as he already is. Let him be a safety blanket for Jordan Love. Let him ball out and have his best season. There's every reason for Romeo Doubs to play well in 2025 as he is a free agent next year. So let him play well. Let the chips fall where they may. If he plays really well, he might be too expensive for the Packers to keep next year, and we'll get a compensation pick for him. If he plays average, maybe we could bring him back with a Packer-friendly deal for 2026. There's so many options for Romeo Doubs, but he is really a key part of the Green Bay Packers offense. And I really wish Packers fans would put these trade theories aside, put the issues with the suspension last year aside, and really root for Romeo Doubs to be successful. If Romeo Doubs is successful, the Green Bay Packers are successful. And that's what we all want to see. And we'll worry about next year later. If he gets injured, we'll deal with it then. But right now, Romeo Doubs is a Green Bay Packer, and he should be supported 100%. And this trade talk needs to just go away. Next, I want to talk about, there's no hints about who's going to play in the preseason game yet. I haven't seen anything in the media. I haven't seen Matt LaFleur talk about who's going to play in this preseason game. It used to be the third preseason game was the dress rehearsal for the regular season, but that was back when there was 4 preseason games. So with 3 preseason games, it's really been a mix across the NFL. Sometimes teams use it as their dress rehearsal game. Sometimes teams put their players in bubble wrap and they only let backups play in the last preseason game. My prediction is Jordan Love is not going to see any action here, and Matt LaFleur has already said that earlier this week. But I do expect some of the starters on offense for the first half with Malik Willis. And I think the reason for that is we have some injury issues. We have some players that are going to be out. So it wouldn't surprise me if we saw Romeo Doubs out there for a little bit of the first half. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw a little Matthew Golden out there for the first half. I think Josh Jacobs is pretty much not going to be playing in this game. I think that's highly unlikely. But I think we'll see all the other running backs get, outside of Marshawn Lloyd, get some playing time. And I really think they'll try to focus on the running game as well as using the players that are out there to have a consistent, successful passing offense. I think Malik Willis will play a half. And I think after that, we'll see the backup quarterbacks behind Malik Willis play for the second half. I think Malik Willis can really benefit from a full half of play so he can get some continuity with the offensive players and feel like he has the ability to go into this regular season with a lot of confidence. So I think Malik Willis will play the first half. As far as defensive starters, I think you might see some starters on defense in the first quarter only. We have more players available on defense than offense right now, but it wouldn't surprise me if we see a couple starters on defense play for the first quarter of this game. And tomorrow I'm going to talk about what to look for in this preseason game in detail. So we continue to hear throughout this week, and the drumbeat gets louder and louder as we get closer to the start of the season, that the Packers are making a move for Trey Hendrickson or Micah Parsons. And I have to tell you right now, don't get your hopes up. I don't think this is going to happen. Outside of Jerry Jones' ego, I think Micah Parsons would be the best chance because of his age and his relationships to the Packers. The Packers have a lot of relationships with Micah Parsons, including Jordan Love. They have a well-documented friendship. In addition to that, Jordan Love's agent is also the agent for Micah Parsons. And there's a couple other Packers who also use that same agent. So that would probably oil the wheels a little bit for a deal. But I don't think Micah Parsons is going to be traded because Jerry Jones has put his head in the sand and he said, I guaranteed a contract. I negotiated a contract with Micah Parsons. It's done. He's going to be a Cowboy. It's just a matter of working out the details. I don't think Jerry Jones's ego will allow Michael Parsons to be traded. I think Jerry Jones is firmly set in the mindset that Micah Parsons will play for the Cowboys or he won't play. I don't think a trade is even being considered by the Cowboys. Have there been offers? I'm sure 15 to 20 teams in the NFL have probably sent an offer in just to see if they could get Micah Parsons on the cheap. But I don't think Jerry Jones is going to trade arguably his best player. In my opinion, Micah Parsons is the building block player for the Cowboys right now. I think eventually this will get worked out. I think if I had to predict right now, I would say Micah Parsons takes a holdout mentality for a couple games. I think there'll be a couple games Micah Parsons does not play. He'll be fined, but it'll be worth it in the end if he forces Jerry Jones's hand. And then I think Jerry Jones will give Micah Parsons the highest valued defensive player contract in the NFL. I think it's going to happen, but he might hold out for a couple games into the regular season before Jerry Jones caves. But I don't think Micah Parsons is going to be traded. So let's turn to Trey Hendrickson. Why would Trey Hendrickson not be a fit for the Packers? Number one, he's on the plus side of 30. The Green Bay Packers generally don't like to trade for players regardless of their elite status when they're over 30 years old. He would require a huge contract with multiple years, multiple guarantees, and that's really not a good combination for the Green Bay Packers for this year and in the future for Hendrickson. The Packers should not overpay for an elite older player. It's just not a good fit. They're going to have to give away draft picks. They're going to have to make Hendrickson probably the highest paid defensive player until Micah Parsons signs his contract. They're then having a significant salary cap issue in the future years because of a Hendrickson contract. And that's just not the way the Packers operate. And my final reason is simply this. I think we've seen enough in training camp to see that the Green Bay Packers have what they need on their defensive line to be an elite pass rushing group. LVN has showed significant growth. Rashawn Gary has shown that he is more comfortable in the new defensive scheme. Kenny Clark is healthy. So there are so many reasons to believe that the pass rush will improve this year that I don't think the Packers need to make a trade to make that happen. So I'm very confident that Micah Parsons will eventually sign with the Cowboys. I do think Hendrickson will eventually sign with the Bengals, and this will be much to do about nothing. And it doesn't really fit the Packers' MO to make either one of those trades. So some interdivision news. The Vikings are apparently very worried about the running back depth. They've contacted the Panthers about possibly having Adam Thielen return via trade to the Vikings. We know the Vikings are going to be missing Addison for the first 3 games of the year. So I think it's very interesting to see the Vikings try to maneuver to get some wide receiver depth. Adam Thielen, that's an interesting move. He got a a folk hero of the Vikings returning to the Vikings, although that offense has changed so much that I don't think you can just say he can just plug into the offense. So we're going to have to see what happens there. Maybe they try to see in cuts if there's some wide receivers they can add instead of Adam Thielen. So there's a lot of ways the Vikings can go. So it's very interesting to see. In my opinion, the strength of the Vikings offense is their receivers. But they've got injury issues. They've got suspension issues. Are these the things that keep the Vikings out of the playoffs this year? Because and how will that impact this offense if opponents, at least for the first couple weeks, can double team the Vikings' best receiver? Is that really going to cause some real serious problems for J.J. McCarthy? Is J.J. McCarthy going to struggle because he doesn't have open receivers and he can't get through his progressions in time to get rid of the ball before the pass rush gets there? I think this is really a very important season for the Vikings. J.J. McCarthy has to be effective, or they might have to look at another option next year. So we'll have to see what happens there. So it's very interesting to see that the Vikings, 2 weeks before the start of the season, feel that they need to add wide receiver depth. So we're going to have to watch that very closely. So let's finally end the discussion today with notes on the Packers' final practice. So one of the things that overshadowed the rest of practice was the fact that there were multiple fights between the Packers and the Seahawks. What are my thoughts about that? Number one, will this spill into the last preseason game? Are we going to see that chippiness and fight on the field in the final preseason game? We know that players take drama and resentment from practice and the offseason into the preseason games. So are we going to see players extra aggressive in this game? Are we going to see pushing and shoving? Are we going to see players that are on the roster bubble try to be so aggressive that it ends up in players being thrown out of this game? We're going to have to watch this very closely. But I love to see the Packers show some fight and team pride at the end of camp. I saw an interview with Zach Tom yesterday after the fights, and Zach Tom came out and said, there was some disrespect, there was some pushing, there was a situation where he, who's a very mild-mannered player in general, had to get involved in some pushing and shoving and threw some punches and actually got kicked out of practice. But he said, you know what? You have to be there for your teammates. And he regretted that there was a fight, but at the same time, he said it's really good for team chemistry to see the whole offense out there supporting each other against the opponents. So overall, I'm happy to see this. And I know Matt LaFleur came out after and he said, hey, we don't need to see that. But I guarantee you there's a part of Matt LaFleur that's just a little happy to see that feistiness from the Packers. We've seen the Packers show that they want to be a dominant team on offense and defense, to be an aggressive team. And some of that comes from team chemistry, and some of it comes from your players having an edge. Now, the key part is, in the regular season, the Packers can't let that edge get them caught in penalties or kicked out of the game. But in a preseason practice, I'm happy to see this from the Packers. This shows me the team is ready to take their aggression to the regular season. Now let's go over the news and notes from the practice. There wasn't as much team activity as you would expect because of all the fights. But we do know that tight ends Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave were standout performers. Matthew Golden continued to show an impressive training camp, and Evan Williams had an interception against the Seahawks in the inter-team scrimmage. So that's also good to know. Also, Xavier McKinney returned to the sidelines with a calf injury. He was doing individual drills, so that tells me he'll be ready for week 1. And another thing that I didn't see highlighted on some of the print media was the fact that Malik Willis had an excellent practice both on script and off script throughout this practice. He was hitting Tucker Kraft and Musgrave consistently. He looked good when he was throwing to Golden. Malik Willis continues to develop and grow as a backup quarterback. And that's part of the reason why I would like to see him see time in the first half of the preseason game, because I'd love to see Malik Willis build on the confidence that he has and the chemistry he has with the rest of the offense, because he showed last year that he can come in and fill in for Jordan Love in a manufactured Willis-centric offense. But I really want to see Malik Willis out there and feel comfortable performing the regular Packer offense, and have a lot of confidence. I have a lot of confidence in Malik Willis coming in. We saw what he could do last year. Hopefully, Malik spends the whole season this year on the sideline, but we know injuries do happen. So I really like to see Malik Willis continue to develop as a quarterback. That's good for the Packers this year as when he is a backup, and it's great for the Packers next year because Malik Willis is probably going to move on to hopefully compete for a starting job next year, and that means the Packers will get draft compensation for Malik Willis if he moves on to another team. So rooting for Malik Willis is always rooting for the Green Bay Packers in multiple ways. So that's going to wrap up this abbreviated edition of the Pack Attack Cast. We didn't have a lot of news and notes from the practice Thursday. The Packers are not practicing today, so we don't have any news or notes from practice today. And I want to save my Packers Seahawks preseason notes for tomorrow's edition of the Pack Attack Cast. So tune in tomorrow morning for our preseason notes for the game between the Seahawks and the Packers. And also, I'm going to answer your questions and answers in a questions and answers segment for the rest of the stream tomorrow. So tune in for that. Give yourself a like and subscribe so you can see that content. And as always, go Pack Go. We'll see you tomorrow.